Let's talk about the overall design of Modeler. In earlier sections, you've seen what a Modeler stream looks like. In the next section, after this, you're going to see how to draw those streams. In this section, I want to take just a couple of moments and give you an idea of how the parts fit together, kind of the grammar of a Modeler stream. So take a look. As you know, Modeler is organized around these symbols called nodes that represent the steps in our process. And those nodes are organized in palettes. This happens to be the favorites palette. I've chosen one of each operational palette down there. So I have one from sources, one from record ops, one from field ops, one from graphs, one from modeling, one from output, and one from export. I want to draw your attention to the shapes, though. The shapes are important because when you're actually using a node, these keywords down at the bottom will be replaced with what you're using them for. So for instance, if you were to create a new variable, the variable name would appear below the node, not this little keyword, okay, this reminder. So let's take a look at the shapes. First, we have circles. The sources obviously are circular in shape. And notice that we've drawn an arrow coming out of the source node, but not in. This is important because in the grammar of Modeler, an arrow going into a source node does not make any sense and would not be allowed. That does not mean that you cannot write back to the database, but that would not be a source node. That would be an export node. Okay. Next, we move on to the hexagon shapes. Now, there are two palettes that have hexagons: record operations that deal with rows and field operations that deal with columns. So, for instance, in Modeler, you would select rows and not others. For instance, selecting only women and not men, or only men and not women, as you're analyzing your data. Filtering, however, is filtering columns of your data, okay? The variables, the inputs. Notice if you look at the icons, a lot of the icons are quite clever. So the filter node has three arrows representing three inputs, but one of the inputs has an X over it because that input has been dropped. That's one of the things that the filter node can do. Notice as well that with hexagon shapes, the arrows go in and out. You see, these are the road intersections of your stream. They are the only node that you drag onto the canvas that allows an arrow going in and an arrow going out. Arrows going out in multiple directions, very common. Arrows coming in from more than one direction is possible, but only certain nodes allow that. But hexagons, to repeat, are the only nodes that you drag onto the canvas that allow this. Now, let's talk about the triangles. Graphs are all triangular in shape. And you notice here that there's an arrow going into a distribution node. Arrows only go into graphs, and then graphs are then presented to the screen. So in a sense, the data flow terminates there. Sometimes folks will refer to triangles, pentagons, and squares as terminal nodes, meaning that the arrows go in but don't come out. Okay, let's take a look at the next one. The pentagons and the diamonds, it's important to understand the difference between the two. Very important, in fact. So the pentagon shapes are what you find in the modeling tab. So all of the modeling algorithms are this shape. There are a couple of other nodes that aren't modeling algorithms exactly, but that belong in this palette for other reasons. More about that later. But notice again that the arrows only go into the modeling. So where does the model itself appear? Well, if you look here, there is a pentagon shape that is labeled discriminant. That's a modeling technique that uses discriminant analysis, and the arrow goes in but doesn't come out. So inside that node, you're going to find your drop-down menus, your checkboxes, the things that you would select to control what kind of discriminant model that you want to build and with what variables. But beneath it, it happens to be a different modeling technique. It's logistic. But beneath it, there's a diamond. And the diamond does have arrows going in and out. The diamond is what the pentagon automatically produces in its act of making a model. So the diamond is the model, the pentagon shape, what sometimes my colleagues and I call the model factory. You won't find that in the documentation. It's just kind of a little reminder of what this thing does. The modeling node produces a model, thus the little nickname modeling factory, and it will automatically send this diamond onto the screen. So that's why I said that the hexagon is the only node that you can drag onto the canvas from the palettes that has this characteristic. So what does the diamond do? Well, the diamond is the actual model. So new data flows through it, and the data is thereby scored. So obviously terribly important that data can come in, get scored, and go out. So obviously a diamond has to have arrows going in and out, but the diamond appears on the canvas when you run the model. You don't drag it onto the canvas. Okay, finally, we have the squares. And the squares either send results to the screen or they send results to another file. So you output to screen, you export to file. Either way, that data has terminated at that point. So, like the other nodes that we might call terminal nodes, the arrow goes in, but it doesn't come out. So, if you're brand new to Modeler, that will all seem a bit abstract at first. But now that you have a feeling for the grammar, we're going to move on to actually using the mouse to draw these streams.